Let's do it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ANC 34G regular scheduled meeting for June 25th. And we have a fairly packed agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have two commissioners that should be joining us at any moment. One commissioner, Commissioner Higgins, probably a little after 7:15. And hopefully Commissioner Zeldin jumps on relatively soon. My name is Lisa Gore. I am the new chair. This is my first full meeting as chair of the ANC, so please be patient and kind. I'm glad we're not in person because no one can throw tomatoes. But I am the single member district commissioner for 34G01, which borders Western Avenue, Oregon Avenue, Beach, a little bit past Pinehurst Circle and back over around the tributary in Beach Drive. I serve the neighborhoods of Hawthorne and portions of Barnaby Woods along with Michael Zeldin. And thank you all for coming tonight. At this time, I want the commissioners to introduce themselves, and I start with Randy Speck.
I'm Randy Speck. I'm the commissioner for ANC 34G03. That's basically the area between Nebraska, Nevada, and Broad Branch. And we're glad to have everyone here tonight.
Chas?
Sure. My name is Chas Cadwell. I'm the commissioner for the 34G07, which is basically between Reno Road, Military, and Kanawha on the north, and then Nevada and Nebraska on the east and the south.
Thank you, Chas. Connie?
Good evening. My name is Connie Chang. I am the commissioner for ANC 34G05. My district begins on Legation on the east side of Connecticut, where Chase Bank is, and it goes all the way up to Chevy Chase Circle, around to the east on Western, down Broad Branch Road, and then it hooks back into Legation with a little tail that goes between Chevy Chase Parkway and Nevada down to Jocelyn Street. Nice to be here and happy that you guys are here.
Thanks, Connie. Peter?
Hi, my name is Peter Gosselin. I'm the commissioner for District 6, which is the west side of Connecticut, back to 41st, between Western Avenue and the Chevy Chase Circle and Military Road, and a peninsula to the east to Chevy Chase Parkway, between Kanawha and Legation.
Thank you, Peter. And Michael Zeldin, Commissioner Zeldin has joined us. Michael, can you introduce yourself and give us your district?
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. I am Michael Zeldin. I represent 3G04, which is Lafayette down to Western over to Utah, ending sort of at one side of Upland and one side of Morrison, although my district is changing with the new boundaries.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so we have a quorum of 6 commissioners, so we can conduct our business tonight. And when Commissioner Higgins joins in, we'll have him introduce himself. So meeting procedures. We will have Commissioner Chang will elevate speakers. There are a couple speakers that are here tonight. When we call you on the agenda, if you'll raise your hand so Commissioner Chang can elevate you. We ask that, except when you're recognized to speak, all attendees, you'll be in virtual meeting mode, so your devices are muted to avoid disruptions. We'll follow the agenda. We'll also see if there are any modifications to that agenda, which I think we have one. Presenters, usually when you give your presentation, commissioners will ask questions and then we'll follow by the community. During the meeting, residents, please use your chat function. If you have a question, you can also use the Q&A function. That makes it a lot easier for us to find and answer your questions. Every resident will have an opportunity to be heard on an issue before any resident is heard twice. And we understand that sometimes issue may provoke strong emotions and that these expectations may be forgotten. Part of my job as chair is to make sure that I remind everyone of the norms. And as you may notice, we've have a meet and registration process, and that makes sure that we have people that are registered to attend the meeting and that our meetings form or follow a certain decorum. We've had some issues in the past with unruly behavior, unfortunately. So we are going forward, we're asking people to register for our meetings. Anything that I left off, Randy? Any rules, any norms? Okay. So the agenda right now has been published and sent out to the community, I believe on about a week ago. And I think we have one addition to the agenda from Commissioner Gosselin. Peter, do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, I just would like to add a vote or discussion and a vote on a routine liquor license renewal for the Avenue at 5540 Connecticut Avenue. Should take only a couple of minutes. I've already talked to the owner.
I don't have any objections to that, commissioners. Does anyone have any objections? Are we all okay with that? Okay. So I move to adopt the agenda with the addition of the liquor license for the Avenue.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 6-0, thank you. Okay, and I have, we'll start with community announcements. I have a few. One of the announcements, first ones I want to talk about is a program called Lifeline. It's with DC Public Service Commission as well as Verizon. It's a reduced telephone and broadband service for low-income consumers and seniors. It's a program of the Federal Communications Commission and the Public Service Commission. It provides eligible subscribers a discount on their monthly phone bill or broadband service. If you're under 65, you can qualify for $3 a month. If you're over 65, seniors, they pay $1 a month. In terms of qualification, subscribers must either have an income that is at or below 135% of the federal poverty guidelines, or be a participant in programs such as Medicaid, SNAP, Section 8 public housing, or SSI. To apply, I'm going to state the phone number. I'll also try to put it in the chat. You can call 1-800-234-9473 for program eligibility. And I actually helped a senior in my neighborhood today sign up for this, who is just super struggling to pay their phone bill. So it's a great program. I thought I would bring that out to the rest of the community. Also, DC government is having a summer hiring fair. It's slated for August 11th and 12th, but you need to register for the event by Friday, July 29th. And I'll try to put that in, or that's when registration opens. Registration closes on August 7th. So that's fairly recently. And I'll put that registration information in the chat as well. We're on council recess. The next legislative session, however, is on September 20th, and a regular legislative meeting is scheduled for October 4th. Our AG, Carl Racine, is hosting a really excellent program called Fighting Elder Justice. He is doing that with DC AARP State Director Louis Davis Jr. It's going to be on Thursday, this Thursday, the 28th at 6 p.m. And it's basically a conversation of how to protect seniors from financial abuse and scams, especially in the period of COVID, because that's, you know, usually when you have situations like that, that's when people have a tendency to get scammed. So I will put that information in the chat. It's via Zoom or Facebook Live, and there's a RSVP link for that. City Open is July 30th through the 6th. That's going to be at Carter Barron. I hope some folks can attend. I don't know if I can deal with that heat, but I love tennis. I played tennis pretty much all my life. I love it. You can also pre-register now to receive the monkey vaccination in DC. Pre-registration is open, and there's a website that you can make your appointment, and that's preventmonkeypoxdc.gov. Once appointments become available, you'll receive an email invitation, and then you'll have up to 48 hours to claim your appointment. There's eligibility criteria. I'll try to pop that in a link as well. And DC Health now also offers an at-home COVID test. So DC residents who need reasonable accommodations, especially those that have difficulty leaving their homes, can now receive at-home COVID testing. And you can call DC Health, the COVID call center, at 855-363-0333, at least a day in advance for registration. And lastly, we are in the season of folks running for ANC commissioner. So I just picked up my ballot access petitions this week, but it's a great way to serve your community. It's nonpartisan, part-time volunteer. Some people will say full-time, but part-time volunteer position for elected leaders to serve their communities. Your jurisdiction is roughly 2,000 of your neighbors, and you'll work on a wide range of issues ranging from development, public safety to traffic infrastructure. You can, the ANC petitions became available on July 20th. They're due on August 10th, and you must turn in at least 25 signatures from folks that live within your single member district. Right now, we have 2 SMDs that are going to be open, single member district 7 to replace Commissioner Caldwell, and single member district 03 to replace Commissioner Randy Speck. And those are all my announcements. I know there are a couple other ones out there too. Any commissioner have announcements?
I have one.
Randy?
Yeah, since this is with regard to DC Water's lead service lines that serve a lot of our houses in this community as well as all across the city. There are in total about at least 30,000 of them that are lead service lines. And this presents a real problem because any amount of lead in water is a danger, not only to just children, that's often the greatest danger, but to everyone. So we want to get the lead out. Since last November, I've served as one of 2 council-appointed representatives on an interagency task force to make recommendations related to DC Water's plan to replace all of these lead service lines across the district by 2030. The task force has met about every 2 weeks since November, and we've been working on recommendations to do a number of different things. One is coordination among the relevant district agencies. This includes the Department of Energy and Environment, Department of Transportation, DCRA, as well as DC Water, of course. Then also to identify any barriers to being able to complete this by 2030 and recommendations for solutions. Identification of possible funding sources. It's going to cost, there are various estimates, but as much as $500 million to do this. And development of ways to improve DC Water's replacement plan. And finally, propose legislative changes that may be necessary to accomplish this. The task force has now released its draft report, and it's available on DOEE's website. And I'll try to put that in the chat as well. The draft report includes a version that represents a general consensus of all of the task force members, which was difficult to achieve, but we did get a consensus on a lot of key issues. There is also another version there that includes all of our comments and a lot of the things that were left out of the final version that people might be interested in as well. We also include a piece of draft legislation that includes a lot of the pieces from Council Member Louis George's bill that she has introduced, but we've also added some things that we think would be important as well. The draft report is very much subject to modification based on input we received from the public, and the task force will hold 2 virtual listening sessions on July 28th, this Thursday. One is from 12 to 1 o'clock, and the other is from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And that's the information on the details of that are also on the DOEE's website. Comments on the draft may be sent to leadline.replacement@dc.gov. The task force is expected to submit a final report in late August, and the council will hold a public roundtable hearing on the task force report in September. And as I mentioned, this is really an important project to complete in the district so that we can get rid of this significant health hazard. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Any other commissioners have an announcement? Peter?
I just want to remind people that on June 13th, the commission created a standing committee on zoning, design, and development. And we've opened the period for volunteers between now and between the July 11th meeting and our September 12th meeting. I've been bad in not getting posting more information about this on local social media. I will do so, but please contact any of your commissioners, and you're certainly welcome to contact me at peter.gosselin@anc.dc.gov or at 202-251-3945. I'll put that in the chat. We just need to put together a group of people who are willing to work on these issues. We would welcome people with expertise in zoning, planning, design, and so forth, but you need not feel constrained to have a degree in any of those in order to apply. Thanks.
Thank you.
I wanted to echo what Peter said. Peter and I are the co-chairs of that new standing committee. And I will work with Peter to put that announcement on our website and in other social media that we have for the commission. I have an announcement to make. I've made a decision that I will not seek re-election for my single member District 05. I will serve out my term, the rest of my term, with vigor and with integrity and so forth. It's been a real pleasure. I've learned so much. I've been involved with the commission for a few years now in a kind of resident capacity, working on the community center renovations before it stopped, and then on the racism task force, the housing work group, which was a lot of work, but it was very fulfilling. And I ran for office, and I really wanted to make sure that I was a part of all of these decisions, these large issues that have taken place. And so the Chevy Chase Small Area Plan was very important in order for us to make sure that we engage with the Office of Planning, and now we're really going to go forward, I think, with the council's approval. We're going to move forward with the civic core, and those are all important. And a lot of that work, I think, will begin, the initial work will begin this fall. So I will be involved with that. It's been an honor to serve with my fellow commissioners, and it's been an honor to serve my constituents. So I am very happy to talk to anyone who would like to run. As Lisa said earlier, the nominating petitions must be picked up at the DC Board of Elections. It's been open since July 20th, and they are due August 10th at 5 p.m. You can declare your candidacy online. So just go to dcboe.org. Let's get that link correct. So please reach out to me and let me know if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Connie. We'll miss you. And Commissioner Higgins has joined us. John, do you want to introduce yourself and your single member district?
I'm John Higgins. I'm the commissioner for SMD 02, which extends from Military to Aberfoyle, north-south, or south and south-north, and from Oregon to Utah, from east to west.
Thank you. Any more commissioner announcements before we move to community? Are there any announcements from anyone in the community? If so, raise your hand.
Amir is here.
Is he?
Yeah, I'm elevating him now.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep. Hey, Amir.
All right. So my name is Amir Raventab. I'm with the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, and I have a very brief update today. And that is that DC is having another virtual hiring fair for DC government jobs. That's happening next month, the dates of August 11th and 12th. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And this is an opportunity for someone to get a great DC government job. They're doing hiring, training, all that stuff on the spot, in fact. So if you know someone who's looking for a job, I highly recommend that. And the other thing I wanted to mention was we're having some storms right now and potentially more throughout tomorrow and the rest of the week. So I want to stress that if anyone notices any tree branches, down wires, down traffic lights, down poles, anything like that, to please, of course, exercise caution in the area, and also to reach out to me directly to get that any sort of issue like that escalated. We reach out to DDOT, who does trees, and HCMA for anything like traffic lights, power lines, and if you get it to me, we can get it done perhaps before the storm is done and all the fallout is still there. So I'm going to put my contact in the chat for anyone who needs that, as well as the link to the government hiring fair. But that's about it.
Thank you, Amir.
Yes, we have a question from Commissioner Zeldin.
Amir, just on the point of following up on collateral damage from storms, I've been asking DDOT for a year probably to try to fix the flooding at Chevy Chase Circle every time there's a storm.
Mhm.
The traffic circle traveling west on Western, as you approach the circle, that corner there completely floods. And I have, as I said, I've been asking it to be repaired for a very, very long time. But no repairs yet have begun.
Has
So
DDOT come out and done a visit yet? Or not one
I
since
don't
Christian's
know.
tenure? Okay, so let's
I've
get
spoken to Christian about it, and I think it's in the system, but I don't know what has happened. There's been no follow-up with me, but it creates a traffic
So
problem.
I did.
And besides it, sorry, Mir, the reason I raise it also is because you can't cross the street there on foot. So you can't cross Western Avenue. I mean, you can drive through a puddle, that's fine. But you can't walk across the street or safely ride your bicycle across the street. So it's pedestrian dangers that I'm flagging as much as anything else.
So what I wanted to mention was I did write an email to DDOT a few weeks ago, maybe perhaps a month or two ago, about a bunch of similar issues in Ward 3 about flooding and infrastructure. One of those issues also, it didn't include Chevy Chase Circle, but you said the Chevy Chase Circle was something that was brought to Christian's radar. It did include an issue in this ANC at Nevada Avenue and Chevy Chase Parkway. And the response I got was that they are working on it. And I think they're trying to do some sort of all-encompassing resolution to that. So I'll ask them again about Chevy Chase Circle specifically, and if that's on their radar as well when they plan to address the other flooding issues at Nevada Avenue, because it does, I think, indicate that they need a perhaps a multi-agency response, since sometimes they work with DC Water as well. But yeah, I'll be sure to get that back on their radar and see where they're at with that.
I mean,
Thank you.
Amir, it's really, I think, pretty important to get all the district agencies together, as we've talked about, because these flooding issues are pretty severe and they're not going away. And I think drainage is a real problem. And the weather is changing, it's just not getting better. So let's continue on that email thread. And if any residents are interested, please reach out to me or Amir directly. I'd like to make sure that we can push this through to higher attention.
So I think I have to get back into the panel or to the attendees to be able to send chats to the whole ANC, right? Because right now my chats are going to hosts and panelists only.
You should be able to change that to everyone.
I don't see an everyone option.
Okay. Commissioner Gosselin, you had your hand raised.
You're muted.
You're muted, Peter.
I just wanted to say I agree with Michael about the danger of that drainage, but this is one of these cases, I think, where not unlike our ill-fated efforts to put bike lanes down Broad Branch, where there are all sorts of agencies and players involved, and to do something about the drainage problem at the circle. It borders the circle, and therefore it has to involve the National Park Service. And it's part of this effort that once we get this traffic crosswalk issue out of the way, and DDOT does something about that, I think they have said, DDOT and Maryland and the National Park Service have said they need to redesign the curbing, including drainage. And I'm not expert on this. I'm on the board of Friends of Chevy Chase Circle. I just know that this is one of those issues that the Friends have been fighting for a long time, and it's going to take a lot of design. So
Yeah, it might be a difficult one. I know normally if it were, up to DDOT and DC Water and other agencies like that, when it gets to NPS and other jurisdictions, then it gets quite complicated. We had the Deputy Mayor for Operations and Infrastructure, which is a cluster agency that oversees DDOT, DC Water, DCRA, and a few other infrastructure-related agencies. So that would be applicable for where DC Water has to cooperate with DDOT for like sewer lines. But when it comes to like NPS and things like that, it might get complicated. We do have contacts within the National Park Service as well. But you're right, that could complicate things.
Any more comments on this topic? Okay,
All right.
I think you're
Thank
free.
you, everyone.
Thanks, Amir.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, our next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible vote on a BZA application. And I'm going to start promoting them now. Give me 1 minute. If Alan and Claudia and Kim can raise your hands, thank you. Okay, do we have everyone, Alan?
We have one other person, Jeff Haynes, who's
Okay.
going to be up.
I got it.
He's our architect, if needed.
Yeah.
I elevated him, so he should
Thank
be
you, Connie.
showing up soon.
Thank you.
Okay, Alan, while we are waiting on Jeff, there's Jeff. I think we got everyone. And we got Min. So commissioners, this is an application for BZA application. And it's for a special exemption to construct a one-story rear addition to an existing detached one-story house unit, principal dwelling unit in an R1A zone. And this is in my SMD. So I've had communications with the parties here. I'm going to turn it over to Alan to kind of introduce your team. Do you have any presentation materials, or are you just going to be talking? Do you have anything to show us?
Yeah, if necessary, Madam Chair, Jeff and Min have got a couple of diagrams that can describe what we're doing, if that's helpful to the commissioner.
That would be great.
Okay, I'm going to do just a quick introduction, then turn it over to Jeff, and he'll get into the specifics. But first of all, thank you very much for allowing us onto the agenda. It seems that this is the protocol for what we're attempting to do in our house. Thank you all for your service, for what is probably often a thankless job. My wife and I, Claudia, who is right next to me, live at 6801 32nd Street, right smack dab in the middle of Chairman Gore's geographic jurisdiction. We've lived in the area, in this home for close to 30 years, and in the district much longer than that. In fact, when we first moved here, we were the youngest couple in our neighborhood, and now we are the patriarchs and matriarchs of our neighborhood. And it's changed quite a bit over the 30 years. We are doing a small renovation to an existing room on our house, converting an outdoor patio area. It's an indoor kind of sunroom, extending it just a little bit, just a couple of feet, to build a home study and office to get us up out of our basement and into one floor in preparation for our senior years, and also, quite frankly, to upgrade our working conditions. Both my wife and I have been working at home for the past several years, and at least in my case, that's not going to change. It's the last time I've been to my or our or a office has been years, and as this Zoom call demonstrates, you can do the business of society quite well virtually. So that's one and two reasons, and so we want to get the technology up and just have a better environment for our work at home situation. And the second thing I'll mention, which seems to be relevant in these issues, are that we've already contacted every single one of our contiguous neighbors, showed them our plans, and also talked to many of our next level neighbors, and even in some cases, one beyond that. We've got them all to sign a support letter, which is in our packet to the Board of Zoning, and they're all supporting this quite enthusiastically. No objection from any of our neighbors. In fact, to the contrary. It is a very, we believe, small variance, and if the commission would like to hear some details, Jeff has got a couple of slides that he can show you. Jeff is our architect who has helped us do some other things on our home over the decades also. So,
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, commissioners. I do have some slide material. How do I bring that up?
You should be able to share your screen. I made you a co-host, so you can share your screen.
Very good. Got it. So I'm going to touch on a few key points. I'll make it as brief as possible, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Starting with this graphic in the middle, it's a map from the DC zoning showing the Alan and Claudia's property here at the intersection of 32nd and Beach Street. I wanted to show that they're one of the smallest lots, and the lot size and configuration is what is driving this application. Their lot is 6,562 square feet. Adjacent neighbors' property are 1,000 plus square feet larger, as high as 12,000, 13,000. So they are one of the, if not the, one of the smallest lots in the neighborhood. It's also on a corner lot, so you have street frontage on two sides. It's also an irregular shaped lot compared to the other neighbors, or most of the other neighbors. It tapers from the street, it tapers inward to a smaller dimension. And all these, the size and shape affect how the house was sited on the property and the setbacks. Moving up to a larger view of the property, again, 32nd Street here to the left, Beach Street here to the bottom. You see this dashed line here wrapping around the property. Those are the setback lines as per the zoning code standards. You can see the footprint of the original house in the striped shaded footprint here. And as you can see, it's non-conforming from the start. Its present footprint has, because of the narrowness of the lot and the size of the lot, they had to squeeze the house onto the site and in a non-conforming way. The area that you see shaded here in the middle, this is where the current sunroom and bedroom is currently located. We will be removing that one-story structure And we're going to essentially replace it with a slightly larger footprint. And you can see this area beyond the rear setback line is what we are asking for. So the rear setback is 25 feet, noted here. Our new addition will decrease that to 17 feet 4 inches. So we're asking for about a little over 7.5 foot variance from the rear yard setback of 25 feet. Our lot coverage is 40% is allowed. We're going to be with the new addition, we're going to be at 42.7%. And I think a reasonable amount of 2.7% increase above the allowable 40 is a reasonable ask given the restrictive site conditions here. So also to point out before I move on, you can see that the proposed addition is really tucked within the U-shaped footprint of the original house. It's set back from the farthest point of the existing house. So it's about 5.5 feet set back from these existing wings of the house. I'm going to move through that plan to the proposed plan. Again, this is further just to illustrate the dark walls that you see here is the proposed floor plan of the new den and bedroom and bathroom. Again, it is set back from the original house wings, as you see here. And I believe from 32nd Street, this addition is not visible at all. From Beach Street, you might get a small view of the roof gable of this addition at certain vantage points. And I'll show you some photographs a little bit later of those views. So currently this middle drawing is the front view of the house. It's a one-story house. It has brick and stone materials. This was an addition done back in, I think it's 2005. Our new design, which is shown here in the bottom, specifically our addition is this piece here in the middle between the flanking wings of the house that we saw in the plans on either side. Our roof, I think a key point here is our roof line is going to be lower. Our ridge line is going to be lower than the main house ridge line. So it's well scaled to the house. The width of the main room is about the same as the bedroom width, perhaps a little smaller. Again, it sits back from the wings of the main house and tucks neatly into the U-shaped of the floor plan. So this is a photograph from 32nd Street. You really will have no sight line to this new addition. The adjacent neighbor has tall hedges here. I don't even think they would be able to see it from whether the hedge was here or not, because of the existing roof lines and massing of the house. It would not be seen from 32nd. This is actually a shot around from that previous photograph around the corner looking down towards Beach. Again, our addition is tucked around the corner here of this original wing of the house. And you see down beyond the other wing of the house, and our addition is going to be tucked back in there. You would not have a view from the northern neighbor whatsoever. This is a shot from Beach Street. You see the what is the kitchen wing of the house here presently. Beyond, you see the ridge line of the far wing, the bedroom wing, and our addition is going to be in here. So you will probably get a sight line. You might see the top of the gable roof of our addition back in here, but really low impact in terms of the streetscape. we feel it has zero impact on the streetscape. It's tucked neatly away into the middle of the site and does not have an effect on the adjacent neighbors, particularly this neighbor. There's no shadowing, no loss of use or enjoyment of the adjacent neighbor's property, in our opinion, of course. Another shot a little bit closer up. The other aspect of this is the site rolls up from Beach Street. So you're not on eye level with what would be our addition on the existing house. So I think that further disguises that offset of street level to the house level, helps hide our proposed addition. So in closing, I think the rules for special exception really apply well to this project. We've tried to be sensitive to the scale of the house, to the architecture of the house, as well as to the neighborhood. We believe that maintaining similar roof forms, a roof line that's lower than the existing house, all contribute to a well-scaled and well-placed addition that we feel has low impact on the community and neighbors. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Jeffrey, do you think you could stop sharing your screen unless commissioners have, first let me ask this, any of the commissioners have any questions on this? John?
Yes, Jeffrey, just excuse me. I apologize if I missed it the first time around. But what is the nature of the special exception? Is it height or is it property line?
It's lot coverage and rear setback.
And what's the footage involved? 10 feet, 20 feet, 3 feet?
We're talking about 7.5 feet roughly of setback. So we're going from 25 to 17 feet 4 inches. And on the proposed lot coverage, we're going 2.7% over the allotted.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any other questions? Okay.
I was just, the only thing I was going to say was I really applaud the residents for sharing these plans with all their neighbors. It was really nice of you to do that so that there's no concern when they start to hear construction and that they know what you're doing. So.
You live in a wonderful neighborhood. I mean,
Really nice.
I'm not kidding, it's fantastic.
I agree. Okay. Jeffrey, do you mind stop sharing your screen? Okay, perfect. That way I can see all the commissioners. If there's no other questions from any commissioners, or one last call for questions from anyone in the community. Okay, no attendees have any questions, so I call for the vote that the commission accepts the or approves a special exemption for this BZA application. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. All right.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner, do we have to do anything from this point on? Or do you communicate with the board that we have your thumbs up?
I believe we do the communication. Randy, can you explain that for both?
Yes, there's a form that has to be filed by the commission. I think it's a form 120, if I'm correct. I can't remember exactly, but there's a form to file, and the commission files it as a part of the record at the BZA.
Thank you very much.
I'll get that done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Peter, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, why don't we take
with the routine liquor license?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a routine liquor license renewal for the Avenue at 5540 Connecticut Avenue Northwest. I have spoken with the owner, Tim Walsh. He says this represents no change in hours or any other aspect of operation. And I've asked the other question that I've learned over these 2 years to ask, which is he has had no complaints, certainly no alcohol related complaints. So I think this is routine, and I'd move that we, unless there are comments from other commissioners, that we simply approve our support for this liquor license renewal.
Peter, are they present?
I told them they didn't need to be because I'd asked the operative questions. So it's my fault if they're not, but they're not on the list of attendees, but it's not their decision. They were willing to come. I thought it was not necessary, but do you want to speak to them? This is not coming up for, it is coming up for a hearing it's coming up for a hearing on September 26th. So it's after our next meeting, if you feel strongly about it, but I did not see anything controversial about it. So I'd advocate we just support it.
Okay. Randy, are there, just for my education, I thought there was like documentation that circulated with these approvals for the liquor license. Is that true?
There's a notice that has to be posted at the facility, where the license is. And ordinarily, there's some ANCs that have that don't take these up at all routinely. When nothing is being changed, they don't even do anything with it. But we have traditionally notified people in the community via our agenda and said, we're going to consider it. And then we have opened it up to the community to have any comments as well. Now, the one thing we haven't done here is it wasn't on our agenda. And so people didn't know it was going to be on tonight. And so it might be wise to hold this off until our September 12th meeting, just to be sure that we've got the community notified and that there's been an opportunity for anyone to raise a complaint if they have one.
Exactly.
Can I make a suggestion here? And again, this is really my fault, but I'm looking at the notice that we got that I think, Lisa, you passed on to me from the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. While the hearing is not until September 26th, it said petitions, letters of opposition or support must be filed on or before September 6th. Would it satisfy the commission if I were to tomorrow morning post on all the local listserv that this came up, and that if people have problems to notify ABRA before that September 6th date? I'll do it, whatever the commission wishes here. We're, as it turns out, it sounds like, at least with regard to community opposition, maybe even ANC opposition, were there to be any, we need to notify before September 6th.
But if we do that, how do we do the vote then? Once you do that, we won't be able to do the vote.
Well,
There's one other possibility, Peter, and that would be to contact ABRA and ask them if we could wait until the 12th or the 13th to get it to them. I don't think it will hurt them in any way. And the other thing is, they recognize that most ANCs do not meet in August, and therefore the timing of their notice and the due date is really not reasonable, given the fact that most commissions don't meet in August.
okay, it's fine with me. I'm happy to have us put this aside, and I will call ABRA tomorrow. I will publicize it, and I will talk to the owner about just what we're doing here. So
Yeah. I think that's the safest thing to do.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
do, because even though the owner has not received any complaints, I think that we should.
Oh, I agree. I understand. I understand the argument.
Okay,
Why-
good. Let's.
Peter, let us know if anything comes up from ABRA that looks like it'll be problematic.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
If we take, just as a suggestion to all of us, if we take this up, this one or things like this, I always think it's better to have the applicant with us in person and not any of us representing their voice.
Mm.
It just seems to me,
Okay,
it's not a criticism, Peter, by any means. I'm just saying, as a protocol, I think we're better off always having the
Yeah.
applicant present.
okay.
Definitely. Mhm. All right, so Peter, you're up next on the discussion and possible vote on a draft resolution for Chevy Chase Circle.
Okay, I presented a version of this at our July 11th meeting, apropos of the discussion that we had at that meeting with the director of DDOT and a very senior member of his team, Derek Voigt, and the Maryland Highway Administration and the National Park Service. I have modified it per our discussion that night, and since then taken a modification from Michael, supported by Connie and Randy, and typos from Connie. So what the resolution says is that we urge the stakeholders, and that's principally the two jurisdictions and the National Park Service, to work with the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle to come up with an interim solution able to be implemented by the spring of next year, so that pedestrians have a safer route to the interior of the circle as it shows itself in all the finery that's being worked on right now, including a rebuilding of the fountain, environmental lights, and more planting. The resolution also says that we urge all these agencies to study long-term measures that might include also signalization. So I think it addresses the issue that Michael raised at the last meeting and others of you raised, that really what's the safe way to do this is signals. But I think we have to take into account what both Joseph Mogus of the Maryland Highway Administration and Derek Voigt said, which is getting a signal in place is not a simple thing. So it can't be done in the time frame that we need to do something to help make this a safer passage to the center of the circle.
Peter, I have a question though. So adding new signals, it takes a lot, right? But synchronizing signals does not. And that's in our resolution, right? To synchronize the signals in order to stop traffic, in order for pedestrians to cross.
Oh, I can add that. Michael, is that what yours said?
That's what Michael was suggesting.
Well, then
Right.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. I basically lifted and put it in, so I didn't. And then yes, so fine. I assume that's easy go.
Right, because synchronization is, we can do it now, but the long term after the crosswalks, if we need to add a signal, then they were saying in the last meeting, July 11th, that it would be a lot of effort. Okay.
Good.
I have just one question, Peter, which I didn't include in the resolution because of this little conversation about new traffic lights are a big deal. I always thought that the big deal of new traffic lights was on the Maryland side of the circle. But what I was wondering, and maybe we can discuss it for a minute, is whether we should be suggesting that there be a traffic light installed on westbound Western. So we have one on eastbound Western, we have one on northbound Western, but on westbound Western, from the park going toward Wisconsin Avenue, which is DC, there's no circle there. There's no light there at that circle.
Well, so let me make two observations. One is I do think that we need, we're not traffic engineers, and we need to say something to urge people to the operative parties to move quickly. So I hope we can pass this without trying to come up with other fixes. I think the argument for why there's not a light, and look, I'm agnostic on this issue. the difference between eastbound Western and westbound Western is that, no, this may not be true. I mean, so one of the things about rotaries is that the control of traffic in rotaries is really determined by who's already in the rotary. And they have a huge flood of traffic coming northbound on Connecticut. So if you watch a westbound Western, those people don't move. They get stuck there all the time because the northbound Connecticut traffic has fully claimed the rotary, and so they can't get out. In fact, I mean, the truth is that I think people are a little too timid there and don't try to whizzle around the corner, particularly if they're, yeah. But in any case, it's quite striking that regularly you have a backup on westbound Western, just because there's much more, the Connecticut Avenue entering into the circle has a much more better claim to, I guess, longer cycle.
Light synchronization between eastbound Western and northbound Connecticut also will help that. Because what happens is when northbound Connecticut empties out, then the eastbound Western traffic starts flowing. So you never get a break for the westbound Western traffic to flow. So synchronization will help what you've just described, Peter, but you're absolutely right. It's a very difficult entry point into the circle. And I don't know why we wouldn't just say, and by the way, we would hope with all deliberate speed, DDOT would consider adding a traffic light on Western in the westbound direction. It's just, one sentence. That's.
Well, look, I will add it because I think we need to get a resolution out. But it seems to me that we're engaging in, I mean, something that says they should study signalization, new signalization, seems to me to cover all sins here. But if you want something in about westbound Western, fine. I mean, I'd be happy to add it. Again, I just think that what we need to focus on now is getting this interim step taken before next spring. And we know from both the statement of the DDOT expert and the Maryland expert that getting new traffic signals is a slow process and it ain't going to get done before next spring. So, but I'd be happy to add something that specifically says that not only we really wanted them to generally study new signalization, but specifically study Western Avenue and westbound Western Avenue. And if I add that, can we agree to this this resolution?
I think John has a question.
Connie, yeah, John has a comment.
I just thought we were getting trapped into talking about a long-term measure when the resolution is a short-term measure.
I think that's right.
So I'd like to proceed with the short-term. Michael has a point. The synchronization there probably is something worthwhile taking a look at. So maybe we could throw in a general term like that. That would be fine.
And that's what I did, John.
The resolution, the critical resolution term to me is urging rather than requiring. Urging is fine. Urging is good.
And that's what I wrote. What I said is that we urge them to consider synchronization of the existing lights and all I'm suggesting now and an additional. I don't think that impairs the short-term desires that we have, and it also would make crossing the circle much safer.
We have a raised hand, Lisa. Should we?
I know. Any more comments from the commissioners?
I'm done, sorry.
Okay, Stephen Seelig has his hand raised.
Should I promote him? I will do that.
Yep.
You start video.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So
We
I
can't.
just wanted to,
Oh, we see you now.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm far away and my screen is moving. Okay, there we go. I'm on a boat. No, not really. So I do think it's worthwhile to have something included about a traffic signal here. Y'all continue to talk about a short-term and a long-term goal, and I just can't imagine that a long-term goal to get people to be able to access the fountain area is not going to include a traffic light. So I just don't really understand why that wouldn't be part of this resolution. And that's the only other thing I would say is that there's going to be changes coming to Connecticut Avenue, as everybody knows, and having a traffic light on the circle is going to be very, very helpful to DDOT in future planning. So I think it makes sense for y'all to get out in front of this thing, particularly since it's going to take so long for MDOT to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
So the resolution, just to be clear, the resolution does include a call for a study of new signals and synchronization of existing signals, the eastbound Western Avenue and northbound Connecticut Avenue. So I think it addresses these, but so I think it handles that problem.
Okay, you got one more community member with a comment. I just promoted Jim McCarthy. Jim?
If Jim can turn on his video, that would be good.
And maybe I gotta unmute myself too. Hi.
How are you?
Like Peter, I am on the board of the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle. And I just wanted to make sure that the resolution does focus on the short-term issue, which is that we want to make sure that there are new crosswalks in place before next spring. I think that's relatively uncontroversial. And, I was on the commission back in 2011 or 12 when we considered signalization. And I can tell you that is a very, very thorny issue. And so I wouldn't want us to get carried away with that at the moment. I think what the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle wanted to make sure was that we encouraged everybody to work together to get new crosswalks in place before spring of next year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Make your motion, Peter.
Okay, I move that we approve the resolution as amended, and I will circulate the final language tomorrow morning. Do I have a second?
Second.
Here. You want to call the vote or you want me to, Lisa?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. All in favor?
John?
Okay. All right.
You're out.
Phew, we got that one behind us.
Okay. Connie, you're up next with Brianne Dornbush.
Yes, I'm going to elevate Brianne. She's here.
Good.
And we have invited Brianne back after we had her on our May 23rd public meeting because we have more questions. And Brianne, I hope you can turn on your video. We had more questions from the commission, and Brianne would have more time to be able to report on some progress and plans from Chevy Chase Main Street. And so I'm going to give you the floor, Brianne. If you have a PowerPoint, I guess if you're co-host, you can certainly share your screen. Otherwise, you can just go forth and then we'll ask you a lot of questions.
Yeah. So I don't have a presentation. I did not realize that that was what you guys were looking for. I sent in advance the report to you guys, which outlined several of our initiatives. And so I'll give you kind of an overview of where we're at right now. We are still in the hiring process. So as you all know, our prior Main Street manager moved on earlier this spring. And as I'm sure many of you are familiar, lots of employers are struggling with the recruiting process. We have not been immune from that. We do have several really great candidates that we're moving through that process. I do want to inform the community, if you are out there and you are looking for a job and are interested in a Main Street manager role, the position is on our website right now. We're currently interviewing candidates, but we're always going to be looking at other candidates if they apply. So please, if you're interested, or if you just have more questions or want to know more about the role, we're also happy to hop on a phone call or a meeting to talk about the role and what that entails. So please make referrals as necessary. We also have a few projects that are underway. We have a contract for street banners that will be going up. We are trying to coordinate that with the launch of, or the Chevy Chase Day that will be in September. So we're trying to do some visible beautification and wayfinding, just trying to mark the corridor and really trying to connect the businesses with that. Coming up on the first Friday of August, we have our first Friday event. And the goal of the First Friday events is really to promote the businesses on the corridor. So it is a business promotion event. There will be multiple businesses throughout the neighborhood that will be running specials. And we will have, we'll be utilizing the Wells Fargo parking lot. We'll have some music and some activities. Community organizations are welcome to come and table and just share about what they do. If that's something that you are interested, or any community members are interested in, I can leave my contact information that they can connect. So this is the first Friday that we're doing, but we're going to be doing them through the fall and hoping to continue this program through the coming fiscal year. And the real goal is to get people out and get foot traffic out to the businesses. So we're using the parking lots that are vacant at night, like a bank parking lot. Not a lot of people are there in the evening. So we're trying to activate that space and then point people in the direction of the local businesses. We're also looking at trying to do some more coordinated promotions among the businesses. And so we're working on, building those relationships and getting some buy-in from the businesses. This is something that in our outreach to those businesses, they are very interested in how they can collaborate and really bring more attention to their collective impact on the neighborhood. A lot of Chevy Chase traffic for the businesses is local traffic. And so we're trying to really capture that and really put the businesses front and center with some special business promotions and remind people that they've got a plethora of fantastic businesses right in their neighborhood. Along some other projects that we are working on, we, in partnership with Historic Chevy Chase DC, Chevy Chase Community Association, and Chart, we are doing a historic call box restoration project. There are 5 historic call boxes throughout the neighborhood. We have funding, I believe we have full funding to complete 4 of those. The first one will be completed by Chevy Chase Day. The goal is to have a big reveal and have some, prominent visible impacts from these collective activities. We have a call for artists out to the community right now. I'll make sure to send, we have an updated RFP for that. I will send that out to the commission so that you guys can circulate that. If you are an artist in the neighborhood, we would love for you to please submit a proposal. We want these, we'll take artists who have great ideas, but we would love some artists from the community who are passionate about their neighborhood. We want the proposals to have a historic bend to them, highlighting some of the historic features of the neighborhood. And so if you have some of those ideas, or you have artists in your life who might have some of those ideas, please help us circulate that. The deadline for that, I believe, is the 31st. I think we've just extended that but we want to get some great proposals for that. We also have we've been really focusing on our technical assistance to small businesses. We have done over 340 hours of technical assistance so far in this fiscal year. We obviously are in the fourth quarter, so we still have more work to do to wrap up this fiscal year. But we are doing a lot of business health checks. Our goal in this coming fiscal year, and particularly in quarter 4 of this year and Q1 of next, is really doing some benchline data of really understanding some of the trends that are happening in the community. So some of the challenges that businesses face are landlord-tenant issues. A lot of those have stemmed from impacts from the pandemic, but also that's always a challenge that we face with businesses across the district. But that's going to be something that we're focusing on. District Bridges, in partnership with DC Mediation and DC Bar Pro Bono, has established a mediation program for landlord-tenant issues. The goal of that is to get ahead of some of these landlord-tenant disputes that could result in the displacement or eviction of a business, a closure of a business. And so it's really a preservation effort. So we try to get ahead of it so that it doesn't go to the legal process where we end up having a lose-lose situation. So we have just launched that. I guess it would have been in June. We've launched that program. And so if you're a business owner or if you're a landlord and you have an issue that you think might be a viable option for mediation, again, my contact information I'll provide to the commission. But we're really hoping that this can be something that, particularly as we are seeing many businesses that have back rents from during the pandemic, many landlords were accommodating or trying to support businesses in surviving that period, but that means that there's a big debt on the back end. And so we're looking at ways to find, a lot of landlords are also small business owners. They might have one property and that might be a challenge for them. They have bills as well. So we try to strike that balance and find some options. Some other technical assistance pieces, our business health checks, our approach to helping businesses in a comprehensive manner. So we ask a bunch of questions about their day-to-day function, the things that they're good at, the things that they're challenged by, and then we try to align our resources and our technical assistance, whether that's directly from us or partners that we have, to meet their individual needs. So that our small business grants are only one small aspect of the small business technical assistance that we provide, and so for businesses that are on the corridor, you should have hopefully heard about our small business grants. Small business grant is not always the best fit for every business. Sometimes what they need is an actual person to come in and help them with their accounting or help them with their lease negotiation. So the technical assistance can look very different, but it is a very customized approach for each individual business that we look at what their specific needs are. So that has been kind of the quick overview of what we've been working on. We also have a community map that we have several sponsors, local businesses that we're sponsors on, but that went to publishing last week. And so we'll be picking up the prints of that. And so you'll be seeing those out in the community soon. It's another way to highlight the businesses, but in a beautiful format. It's a fun map. It also has some historic information on it. We have a QR code that links to some historic information on there. So that will be something that the community will be seeing out and about at local businesses and local events. I would also, if any of the commissioners or any of the community organizations are interested in having some of those maps at some of their events, again, you can contact me and we can get those into your hands. And I will pause there and then answer any questions that you guys may have.
And you'll put your info in the chat, please.
Yes.
So who was first, John or Peter?
Peter, then John.
Me first. Yeah, so let me just start by saying, I think Connie and I are going to have a lot of questions. Connie and I are the two commissioners who represent either side of Connecticut Avenue. I want the commission to note that most of the things that Beyond has mentioned are going to happen. The first Friday is going to happen, August 5th. The maps are going to come. This would be a very encouraging report if it weren't for the fact that this operation has been underway for 18 months. It has been without a program director for 4 to 5 months. And so I'd like to just start with sort of asking Beyond some questions about the commercial corridor and about some of the activities that you have done. And then some questions, and Connie, please feel free to jump in anytime, but some questions about the hiring process. With regard to the commercial corridor, how many businesses are there? How many, well, what type, how many employees? What's the tenure of the businesses and the employees? Do we know that yet?
Yes, we do. And I can give you, I will not rattle those off. There's about 67 businesses in total. We have demographic data, we have employee data, we have tenure data. That is all information that we keep. We also our processes that we hold all of those files in Salesforce. So we also over time have historical data, so we can see the changes.
And how many of those are members of Chevy Chase Main Street are contributing or on the strategic council?
So in terms of membership, it is not a requirement of any business to be a member to receive services from the Main Street program. The membership program is a fundraising tool to support the activities of the Main Street. I would say we've just relaunched that program, and we haven't really pushed it very hard. So there's probably about 8 founding members. That is not just, that is membership that's both residential and business. So we have not pushed a business membership. In terms of the Neighborhood Strategy Council, we have, I believe, about 14 members on there. I have the exact list that I sent over to you guys in the report that has all of the names of those individuals. And the goal is that we try to have a third, and a third. The reality for small businesses is a lot of times they don't have the time to participate in the meetings. And so that's one of the, I'm sorry, my computer's about to die on me. That's one of the goals that we have to try to encourage our businesses to participate in other formats. So we're trying to develop meetings where we can have Monday morning meetings, or a day that sorry, didn't want to lose you guys because my battery. Having daytime meetings where days that businesses might be closed, where they might have the ability to come to meetings. A 6 or 7 p.m. meeting on a Tuesday is hard for a restaurant owner. They're not going to show up. And so sometimes we are trying to adjust those things. Okay, so that's
let's be clear. You've had 18 months of time to do some of this adjusting. Are we just trying these things now, or what have you found a sweet spot in the 18 months for when you can have meetings, or are you
So yes, I mean, right now we're having evening meetings, and we meet with business owners on a weekly basis. We have conversations with the business owners, both on our neighborhood strategy councils and just individual businesses that are in the community weekly. So we're getting that feedback constantly. We're also doing, we do business surveys. So trying to get feedback from the businesses about what they want. For instance, the small business grants earlier this year, we did 2 rounds of small business grants and had very low submission of applicants. And so going back to them saying, we have this free money we want to give away. Why are you not applying? And then getting to some of those underlying causes. They might not have clean hands. They might think that somebody else needs it more. They might have just completed a project. They might, so there are those pieces where we're constantly gaining that feedback to adjust the strategy and to make sure that our programs are successfully implementing strategies for small businesses.
So of the 67 businesses you mentioned, these surveys, how many people have responded to them? And how many people have filed for grant applications of the 67?
So I will say that some of these questions, I need to go back into the data. And that was why I was also hoping to have a meeting with you guys prior to understand what your specific questions were so that I could give you actual data. I don't want to postulate on what numbers might be there.
Well, let's take. I mean, you said that you were trying to get to understand kind of baseline issues. One of which you mentioned might be landlord-tenant issues, and that you started a program with regard to that. So, how many cases of landlord-tenant problems have you handled since the June launch of this meeting?
I'm sorry, since the June launch of what?
This June launch of this program. I mean, you said you just launched something in June to handle landlord-tenant things. So, how many cases have you? How many instances of landlord-tenant problems have you handled?
So the mediation program is across all of District Bridge's programs, and I believe we have 4 current businesses that we're going through a mediation process with.
Okay, look, I mean, I know Connie has questions. I don't want to be the only person asking, so let me.
So I'm gonna yield to John, who had his hand up first, and then I'll come back.
Well, Peter very much hit my question, but I was interested in the landlord-tenant situation. So I had a question about that because that's the kind of a thing which could impact the small area plan and the research that's going into that. The other is in terms of our ability to help you out. If you're having communications issues, that makes the research that you give us a little on the light side. So I want to kind of pursue that as to how you're trying to improve that. But just in 3 sentences or less, what are say the landlord-tenant relations issues that have come up?
So the most common landlord-tenant issues would be back rent from the pandemic. It might be the terminate or the we're coming to the end of a lease and lease renegotiation about what is coming up in the next one. Or there might be something where there's an issue with the building. So there is a repair that needs to be made. There is a dispute. Maybe it's a multi-unit building. There's some issue going on, and the tenant needs the landlord to fix it. There are a lot of triple net leases, and so there can often be debate about what is the tenant's responsibility versus what is the landlord's responsibility. And sometimes the mediation, we can come to an agreement that can find a middle ground there.
Okay, thank you, Connie.
Okay, so should I go, Lisa, or do you want to go?
Just
Let's
real
see,
quick
there's a questions.
on mine. I mean, I just have a comment and.
Okay, so let me go first then. Should I? Okay. So Brianne, you said you used the word we. Who exactly is in charge of Chevy Chase Main Street right now?
So I am leading the programmatic overarching activities. Dr. Gladys Kamau is doing all of our technical assistance. She is on the street every single week meeting with small businesses. And then our director of operations, Madeline Odendahl, is also helping support me in that effort. And then we also have a consultant who is supporting us with the event production for the First Friday's events coming up.
Okay, and my next question is, how many candidates have you interviewed since the time Alex left in March until now? How many applied? How many were qualified? How many have you interviewed? And where are you in that process?
Yeah, so we have had about 10 applicants. Of those, we have interviewed 5 who were worth interviewing. Of those candidates, there are 2 that we are following up with secondary interviews. We have a lot of very, very young candidates that have been applying that just don't have the experience necessary for the role. And so we have been doing some direct headhunting to try to find some more qualified candidates.
Can you give us the sort of main priority list of qualifications? What kind of person are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're looking for somebody who, number one, is a doer. So somebody who's willing to go out on the corridor. We need somebody this is not a remote job. This is an in-person job. It requires the skill set of being willing to listen attentively, really understanding what the small businesses need. If they have they don't need a background in small business, direct small business support. We can teach people how to do technical assistance, but having that mindset of being able to listen and understand what a business needs and working in that team environment of pulling in experts. We have a lot of different consultants and experts that we work with to support our small businesses. And so helping to pull them in. So a collaborative approach is very, very important. And I would say somebody who also has a thick skin. This work can be really hard, and sometimes you're dealing with really challenging issues. And so somebody who can both be positive, but also firm and pushing projects forward. Project management is a huge part of this role. So you have a lot of different pieces all going all at once. And so somebody who can manage multiple projects and not feel overwhelmed by the details, keeping the big picture in focus and managing the details is really important.
Okay, I have several more questions, so I hope everyone's a little patient here. So you're about 4 months into not being able to fulfill this role, and it sounds like the people who are coming are not quite what you're looking for. What are your contingency plans here? What do you expect to do if you finish these secondary interviews and it's really not the right person? What are you going to do?
So we are continuing to run the program. We will continue to do the technical assistance, and we will do that through our contract work. We will continue to have our, one of the differences of the district bridges model is that in the traditional Main Street model, there is one executive director. If they leave, the program does not continue. So in our case, we have other people within our staff who can continue to help things move forward so that we don't have to just pull the trigger on a candidate that's not the right fit, who's going to not be successful. We can find that right person and continue to run the program. I am hopeful with the 2 candidates. I think we can make an offer. So that my hope is that we will be able to move forward. But in the event that we don't, we will continue to do headhunting. We will continue to do recruiting, and we will continue to manage the program with the existing staff and consultant team that we have.
Okay, so I have another set of questions. So it's I'm shifting gears a little bit here. Based on my experience, I think that there's a lack of transparency. There is not enough getting the work done. So this map, I heard from Alex last fall that it was going to happen in December. Now it's July. Mm-hmm. There were other things we had asked to work with Alex on, never happened. And I, sort of like Amir coming in, every meeting Amir is here because he's the mayor's office of, community relations and services. I really do expect Chevy Chase Main Street to have their representative show up at the public meeting and give us an update, especially because of all the changes that are happening on the avenue, because of COVID, because of all the work that's happening with DDOT and so forth. I'm disappointed. I mean, I truly am. When we first came on board, all of us were new. We really felt that Chevy Chase Main Street was going to work in partnership with us, get a lot more done in this year and a half, and it just has not been the case. And I'm not casting blame on any person, but I think there's something with your processes. Something is not quite right. So the emails I get are generic. I definitely like some of the Facebook posts and so forth about certain businesses. That's great. but I don't really see a true commitment that's, like steady and informative and communicative. So I would like to see that. I think that would help both Chevy Chase Main Street as well as us in knowing how to partner better if we have that report. And I'm going to bring up another example of a community board. I mean, I'm getting emails almost every day from the same person who thought of it in our community. I was thinking about it. I worked with Alex. We approached a few businesses and the ball kept being dropped. And I'm frustrated, not just because of that. I'm just frustrated by the lack of our ability as a community to have a board somewhere where we can post messages so people who are not necessarily online can see it. But I don't really see this kind of like strength and partnership, the doer part of it. I don't see. I definitely see nice people, but nice people doesn't cut it now when things are really urgent. And so I'm saying this nicely, but I'm also saying it kind of, strongly, because I want you to know that, when you say there's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on the neighborhood strategy council, rumors have it that people have left. And have they left because they're too busy, or have they left because the meetings are not effective? It's not moving forward. People only come to meetings if they feel like they're going to get something out of it, if there's going to be a result in progress. So I think these kinds of things I would love to maybe not talk to you necessarily here about, but I definitely want to say this directly to you, with my colleagues, that this is what I'm frustrated by. And I think we need to do more. And if we want the community engaged, then that process of engaging them has got to work, and we have to see progress moving forward. And if deadlines are missed, we need to know why, and we need to have this kind of trust, going forward. So that we know that you're going to do these things, and that there's someone on it, and that these interviews are going to happen, and someone is going to come and really take charge of a very important organization.
Absolutely. And I can make the commitment to you that we will have a representative if the commission is willing, and we'll have a representative to give a report at each meeting. That is a commitment I am absolutely ready to make to you guys today. I also would like to follow up and have a follow-on call with you guys to talk through some of these issues in more detail, where we can talk about next steps and talk about some of the challenges that we're facing. Being down a Main Street manager is very challenging. So I'm spread thin. So just being very transparent about that. Hiring takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And so we are trying to make up that gap. So I would love to have a further conversation with you guys about that.
So Brianne, I understand this 4 month and you're trying to get a person in there. I'm really referring to the time before that.
I know.
And I really don't want to see you bring someone in and have the same processes or approach or strategy, so that we have another 1.5 years where, we don't have the partner we need.
100%.
Lisa.
So I'll just reserve my comment a little bit, because I do think we kind of need to move on, and Chaz has his hand raised. But just to piggyback on both what Connie and Peter said, Brianne, I walk the avenue all the time because I'm over there either getting my nails done or shopping or doing something. And there does seem to be a disconnect. Even though that's not my district, I'm in 01, which is Hawthorne and Barnaby Woods. I talk to the business owners all the time when I'm over there about certain things. And what they tell me seems to be a little different sometimes than what I hear at the meetings or from Chevy Chase Main Street, particularly with their participation on some of the big projects that are going on. So I do agree, and I'm hopeful that we can find a way to partner so that the information is shared, a little bit more transparency, and we have a better understanding of what we can do to support the business community on Connecticut Avenue. I think that's really critical. So I will from there. Chaz, you can go on and make your comments.
Well, I don't want to hold up our schedule, but I first of all appreciate your having a written report. We don't often get those in advance of meetings, so thank you for doing that. But at the same time, it has raised a jillion questions, as you've experienced the tip of. And so at some other point or some other forum, perhaps, I'd love to hear about what you do, but not just in Chevy Chase, but elsewhere, about dealing with the fact that we have empty storefronts and need to attract businesses as well. You know, every main street in the country is facing the same issues you've talked about. So, and I don't think any of them are finding it easy either to do these things, but that doesn't mean that the issues that have been raised here aren't important ones. And so I think, I'm not sure if there's a forum besides this public meeting where maybe we could have a sit down of some sort, but I think for tonight, I don't want to hold us up with my list of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to follow up on scheduling a time to have a longer conversation where we can kind of deep dive some of these issues,
Yep.
And talk through how we can improve, what you guys would like to see, what meaningful transparency and collaboration looks like for you guys. So I don't know who best to follow up in terms of scheduling that. Connie, I'll follow up with you, and Peter, I will absolutely follow up with you guys, and we can find a time to have that conversation.
And Lisa, just before we end, let me just say this, perhaps piling on with Connie's comment. I will have to be convinced that you should continue to run this program. I do not think you have done a good job. The fact that you hired the program director that you did, in your report, you say these program directors turn over every 18 months. So I've started calling around to the other main streets in our area. DuPont Circle, the guy's been there 10 years. Tenleytown, the woman's been there 6 years. Van Ness, Glover Park, they've been there 2 or 3 years. When you get a go-getter in one of these jobs, they can make a huge difference. And if you can't get one, the tagging us along through 4 months or 6 months or 8 months is going to be a disaster for a main street that has trouble. I mean, for our commercial corridor that has trouble. So I remain to be convinced that you should even run the program anymore. And I just say that to my colleagues too. Thank you.
All right, Brianne, thank you so much. And I'm assuming Connie will be in touch with you on follow-up discussions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, is the discussion on and possible vote on draft resolution for MPS's Beach Drive environmental assessment. Everybody hopefully got a copy of that. I know there were some responses that came back in. Commissioner Zeldin posted an additional edit to the resolution, and Michael, I just looked at that. That was paragraph 15. I think the way I want to do this, commissioners, is introduce it just kind of by the books, introduce it, get the discussion going, and then any edits, comments, changes, or possible votes. So with that said, I move that the commission adopt the resolution as edited. Is there a second?
I think I'll have to wait. We're getting in.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Well, let's get it on the table. I mean, I second it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lisa, for the members of the public who are here, do you want to explain what it is?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. So bottom line is the resolution is regarding the MPS discussion of the closure of Beach Drive. National Park Service adopted, I think it was alternative 3, which was a seasonal closure. There were three different alternatives available. Full closure, which is return to pre-pandemic management. Then basically opening it, leaving it open or closed to traffic. So basically where we are. And then alternative 3, seasonal closure. And I'll go into a little bit more about the seasonal closure. But let me just explain my rationale on the resolution. So the resolution, which I know is not up for public display at this time, it will be posted to our website so you guys can see it. It pretty much talks about a little bit about the history of the park. It talks about National Park Service and why they did this environmental assessment. And that was basically because when Upper Beach Drive was closed, they basically saw a lot of increased traffic, pedestrian traffic using the parkways. And they wanted to do an environmental assessment according to NEPA standards to make sure they understood the impact on the park and the Park Service's mission. It talks about the 1966, how Park Service set motorized access to Beach Drive and those closures, particularly on Sundays along sections of Beach Drive between Joyce and Broad Branch. Then we talk about how the superintendent of Rock Creek Park basically entered into this discussion during COVID-19 and the temporary closures that led to the full extended closures. The resolution also discusses the Council of District of Columbia's involvement in this matter, including passing a resolution 9-4, as well as the letter that was submitted by Delegate Norton requesting permanent closure, as well as permanent closure requesting by the Montgomery County City Council, which passed its own resolution, which passed 9-0, requesting the parkway remaining closed. The resolution discusses the public engagement process that went into this. It talked about two particular petitions, one from the People's Alliance of Rock Creek and Washington Area Bicyclists Association, which garnered about 4,000 signatures. Additional support from over 20 local and regional organizations. It also talked about the competing petition that was circulated here in the area that garnered 1,733 signatures. It discusses the scoping period from National Park Service that received more than 2,400 pieces of correspondence, 4,100 individual comments, with the highest number of comments, 1,838, expressing support for Alternative 2, which is full closure for recreation. 343 of those comments express support for Alternative 1, which is no action, return to pre-pandemic managing. Then out of those three alternatives, NPS identified Alternative 3 as its preferred alternative. The resolution talks about, let's see, where are we at here? DDOT's, some of the issues that DDOT pointed out in terms of impacts along Connecticut Avenue, 16th Street. Their opinion that a midday closure would be acceptable. However, they also noted the concerns with that particular suggestion. I didn't list in detail the improvements that DDOT said could mitigate traffic impact to the closure, or the additional considerations that DDOT wanted to take into consideration for improvement into the around the surrounding area. Some of the concerns that I raised with this study, including the data that was used for trafficking modeling for this decision, is pre-COVID traffic level. DDOT in its study mentioned that methods that it couldn't take into account traffic levels pre-pandemic when the roadway was open to motorized users because of the pandemic. Most data from the survey was 2017 to 2019 data. One of the things I also highlighted I just saw something I have to correct, that I highlighted in here, which is pretty troubling, was NPS's assertion that one of the things NPS mentioned in here was the use of social trails. That was a really predominant issue that came up, I believe, in a July 8th or 18th meeting. And one of the things that DDOT continued to assert was the way to mitigate that was through increased vehicle traffic. which is a weaponization of traffic or vehicles against pedestrians, which is so troubling, just extremely troubling. And I put in here something that Superintendent Washburn said in terms of Beach Drive creating a deterrent. And I believe her words were cars whizzing through Beach Drive would create a determinant or a deterrent that prevents people from cutting through the park and using unofficial trails, which is really troubling for us in the District of Columbia, because one of the things that we're striving for is that adherence to Vision Zero. And we're having a terrible time with that. We've had 4 pedestrian deaths in July alone. So those statements are very troubling to me. And I can't imagine that the Park Service wouldn't have another means to deter use of those unofficial social trails other than putting vehicles in the park. We acknowledge that the increased use of those unofficial social trails was recently believed, but the acknowledgement doesn't really state when the use of those social trails were created or if increased vehicle traffic would in fact be a deterrent. So there's no empirical evidence to support that particular claim. I put in this resolution that NPS's preferred alternative seems out of step with our local climate goals and transportation goals. I highlighted Sustainable DC 2.0 plan, which has 13 core areas. There's 4 areas that I think really impact this study, particularly health, transportation, nature, and climate. And I linked to that other DC policy goals surrounding those areas. I highlighted one of those policy goals is to reduce commuter trips by 2015 by 2032 by 25%. So to reduce to 25% our commuter trips by cars by 2032. I also state that, NPS's decision is not necessarily a zero-sum game. It is a compromise. There are some parts of that decision that are attractive to people on both sides of the argument, motorized users versus recreational users. But I want the commission to understand, and I want the general public to understand, in me writing this resolution, my ultimate priority was public safety, community safety, especially, and achieving our climate and transportation goals. I just can't support a resolution on this that doesn't take those into account and doesn't strive to get where, as a city, where we're striving to go. The COVID-19 pandemic has allowed us to see an opportunity to reimagine our spaces. I believe we had one of our panelists on today that talked about working from home and hadn't been to an office in several years and didn't plan on going back. I don't think most people do. And I think that's what's really important about those DDOT traffic counts being current and not back to or using counts that are post-pandemic, because this is something that we're talking about, I think, visioned out to 2045. And that is a long way out, but I think we have to really look at how our current traffic patterns are impacting these issues and how that is going to determine what occurs in the future in terms of traffic. So I conclude in a resolution that we understand the deep complexity of this decision and the balance that NPS is trying to strike. Thanked our community for their input. I added that I didn't think the decision is in the long-term best interest of the community or communities adjacent to the park or as the district as a whole, and urged NPS to adopt alternative 2, full closure for recreational use. I urge NPS and DDOT to obtain more recent traffic impact analysis and base the EA on those outcomes. I urge NPS to align its decision with district broader environmental, health, and transportation goals outlined in sustainable DC 2.0 Vision Zero and other DC policy guidance documents. And I urge DDOT to immediately pursue budget authority and implementation of its recommended infrastructure improvement projects to mitigate the closure impacts that would occur if it was closed for recreational use. So that is a background of the resolution. And Randy, you have your hands up, and I know you had a comment in there. So you want to start off?
Yeah, I'll begin the process, and I know others are going to have something to say about this as well. But first of all, thank you, Lisa, for the position that you've outlined here, because I think that is an important consideration. And I think that we all need to be thinking about the future and not just about the past and what was appropriate then. But I am also a big proponent of reaching a compromise. And I think in this instance, you've got highly polarized considerations on two sides, either open or closed. And I think I think it was appropriate for the Park Service to look for a compromise position. Now, this is not necessarily the compromise I would have chosen. I thought that closing it during midday, every day, all year round, and having it open for rush hours was preferable. They've concluded, however, that that's not a practical option. And so I can understand that. I understand their reasoning there. The thing that really persuaded me is the new DDOT study that came up just within the last few weeks. And there we've relied heavily on DDOT's analyses in the past in connection with our vote for option C, for instance, in the Connecticut Avenue reversible lanes study. DDOT used exactly the same 2017, 2019 data that they use here. We also relied on DDOT for their study on the impact of the Murray sports field. And they used the same data, 2017, 2019. And that's the only data that they have available. And they can't really test it very well now, or who knows in the future what it's going to be. So I think it was appropriate for them to use that data in the same way it was appropriate for them to use the data in other studies that they've done. And so I would rely on DDOT's expertise in this instance. And they've indicated that there are going to be some impacts from this. Now, whether they're right or not, I don't know. The same is true with regard to Connecticut Avenue and with regard to the Murray sports field too. But they're the guys who do these kinds of studies, and they have come up with their recommendations, and their recommendations are essentially along the same lines as National Park Service. And there are a couple of points that they made that I thought were particularly persuasive for me. And that was their analysis of additional congestion costs, just because people are going to be, the same number of people are going to have to go downtown one way or another, in their assumptions anyway, and that's going to be $18 million annually. And more importantly, from an environmental standpoint, they said over a 50% increase in emissions in the peak hour, peak direction. And so those kinds of things, plus they said additional traffic on the local and collector streets in the Barnaby Woods area of Northwest DC. Those kinds of things concern me. And they had specifically projected increases in the number of vehicles per day on roads like Oregon Avenue, Military Road, Western Avenue, Utah Avenue, Broad Branch Road, and Chestnut Street. All of those were specifically called out in the DDOT study. And I just don't have any basis to disagree with those findings. They're warning us that this is a concern. Now, I certainly think that they needed to implement the steps that they've outlined, the measures that they've outlined to reduce the impact of this additional traffic, because it's going to be there in the summertime anyway. And so I think those kinds of infrastructure improvements that they proposed, there's some on traffic calming measures on Western Avenue, on Utah Avenue. Those are particularly important. And then, as we recall in the DDOT study on the Murray sports field, they also recommended some changes there, particularly at the intersection of 27th Street and Military Road. And I think those ought to be implemented. Now, I agree wholeheartedly with you about what I think is a make weight argument that NPS makes about the social trails. They do say that they've increased very significantly in the last 2 years, another from 2.15 miles of social trails to 30 miles within the last 2 years. That is a potential problem. But as NPS says specifically in the study, they say that they are addressing that through other means, and they say that that doesn't even need to be considered in this EA as a result of that, because they've got other ways to address that. I think that is not a factor, should not be a factor in any decision that they make. But finally, then, and probably this is most important for me, is that they say that they're going to be flexible about this, that they say specifically, this is at page 14, the selection of the preferred alternative does not prevent the superintendent from altering the management of Upper Beach Drive in the future based on changes in the conditions of the park resources and visitor experience. This does not entail any substantial infrastructure changes within the park. And it can be reversed or changed or modified based on experience. And I think that's the way to go. We'll start off with closure during the summers. And if that works fine, maybe we expand that. Maybe these other concerns that DDOT has right now about traffic being diverted elsewhere are not going to materialize, but we can change that. And so I think that's the right way to go right now. And so I would support the compromise that the Park Service has proposed in the environmental assessment, and would urge the commission really to submit comments to that effect.
Peter, then Michael.
I just wanted to pick up on the last point that Randy made. As opposed to many things that we take up as a commission, this the compromise the National Park Service has chosen here is an easily reversible or adjustable one. And indeed, much of the logic, Lisa, that you used to come to the conclusion you reached here is that the data that DDOT, that the Transportation Department is providing, is questionable because it's probably pre-pandemic. Well, we have a sort of a natural experiment here. We have it closed during some of the time, and we have it open during other parts of the year. And so we can see over time whether the effects of closing, and just I'd straighten out for I think most of the people here tonight are insiders on this argument, so that I'm not going to confuse them very much, but I think you use closure both ways. So close means closed to vehicle traffic and open to pedestrians and bikes, right? So, so in any case, we can see over time whether, for example, when it's closed to vehicle traffic, what we find in terms of increases on our nearby streets. And I just think that I mean the environmental assessment has a lot of problems with it, and the discourage people from social trails by killing their dogs arguments does seem like they're really asking for it. They're a truly stupid pet trick of an argument, but that's not a reason to dispense with a perfectly decent compromise for now. And I just offer as one suggestion for those who, I mean, one thing we could do in a resolution is say that we want to take this up within 1 year again. We want to look at this again, so that we put it on our calendar as something we're going to come back to, and not just sort of let it dither along in. I would side with Randy that I say we should support the compromise, maybe put some sort of time limit on our support, after which we would come back to the issue. Thank you.
Michael?
So I disagree. I think that we should start off with the most rigorous application of an environmentally sound policy. I think it was Lawrence Summers or somebody said something like the best way to make a permanent decision is to call it temporary. I just don't think that we start off at this middle ground and then see if we can move it to what is the most protective of the environment and our community. So I would say that we start off with the proposition that it remains closed. What I added as language to Lisa's draft was, it is incumbent upon DDOT now, before any more time passes, to start with signage to keep cars from going through the neighborhoods. I'm completely sensitive to cars going through neighborhoods, and I believe that DDOT can significantly prevent that if they are aggressive in their signage. The same thing I said in respect to the bike lanes on Connecticut Avenue, which is they need to start putting up signs now to keep cars off of the secondary roads before Waze gets its hands on it. So I believe that we are in an environmental existential planet crisis. And I just don't see the benefit of compromising to make it easier for cars to travel. I think that if we don't begin to move away from facilitating traffic by individual cars, whether it be through mass transit or bicycle lanes or otherwise, then we are part of the problem. And I am not inclined to be part of the problem on this. And if Randy and Peter, you are correct, that DDOT says, well, nothing is permanent. Well, let's start with that which is best. And if it turns out not to be best for whatever reason, then we can compromise away from the best. But we don't start in the middle, less than best choice and hope that maybe down the line we can make it best, because in my experience, it never works that way. So that's why I support Lisa's proposition.
John, then Chas.
You're muted, John.
My bottom line is that I support the NPS option 3 for a number of reasons. It's a road. The taxpayers of this country paid $30 million to restore this road. They didn't just resurface it, they dug it up and started from scratch with baseline. And you can see on their website, you know, they moved 23,000 tons of asphalt and so forth and so on. This is a huge construction with some, you know, maybe not enough signage, but all kinds of signage. Clearly, this was meant to improve a road, not to create a recreational area. And secondly, and Lisa, I want to thank you for doing this. Both of our districts border on the park, and I was traveling and so forth, and just got my internet back at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I appreciate your leaning into this and getting it on paper. And I'm sorry I didn't get some of these thoughts to you earlier, but this is a very collapsed process. But I did manage to dig up some information here. And to underscore Randy's point of view, NPS has some documentation of its own, tracing the history from 1897 to 2022. And long about 1960, I think, they began to entertain the idea of acknowledging pedestrian and bicycle impacts. But they took a very gradual, incremental approach. And I think that's what the option 3 here also. To address Michael's point, you can't really assess a negative. Shutting it down is shutting it down. It's radical. It's not environmental. I mean, it's not evolutionary, and it's not incremental. I think giving this option a try gives you kind of a pilot program to make some assessments for the future. Also, to your point in your resolution, This is a federal road. This is an interstate road. This is not something just for DC. The history of this is that the Rock Creek Parkway is a parkway which runs parallel with the park. And the description of it, if I can pull that up. Just give me a minute. It's part of Rock Creek and Potomac Parkway, maintained by the National Park Service. It runs next to the Potomac River and Rock Creek in a generally north-south direction, carrying 4 lanes of traffic from the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington Memorial Bridge north to a junction with Beach Drive near Connecticut Avenue. Well, the Lincoln Memorial and the Arlington Memorial Bridge take you to Virginia. This is an interstate right-of-way. So I think trying to create it as kind of as a neighborhood recreation project does a disservice to the actual mission of the project in and of itself. So I would go with the incremental plan. And I think Randy makes a good point on the traffic. We've been using DDOT figures for several projects because that's the only place we can get them. And I think the 2017 to 2019 pre-pandemic is about all is the best you can do. So I would go with the NPS proposal. And Peter makes a good point. Maybe a year from now we can kind of do a checkpoint and have a review. But we can't review on nothing. And a radical shutdown is a radical shutdown.
But Mark is shut down. I mean, it's where we are now. I mean, so I just want to say it is closed now.
It's closed as a result of the pandemic.
It's not radical. It's what we're operating in a current state now.
As a result of a public health issue, which has gone away.
No, it has not. No, it's not. Okay, Chaz.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really tough issue for me because everything in my history and my being says we need to shut it down. But at the same time, we're also talking about shutting Connecticut Avenue down considerably. And we're asking our neighbors and the people who use both of these roads, so I very much appreciate, Lisa, your point that overall we need to reduce traffic coming into the city through not only our neighborhood, but others as well. And the issue is how quickly and which levers we pull to do that. And my perspective is that Connecticut Avenue lever is a bigger one and a more important one for us to make headway on. And I know the timing is not identical for these, but I think that's a more significant issue for us. And so that the compromise is not one that, for all the reasons you've cited, Michael cited, doesn't make long-term sense, but I think is some way to help this community and the people north of us who use both of these roads make the adaptation to, when there is better bus service, when we have more electric vehicles, when et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess I'm with Peter and Randy and John on this one.
Okay. Michael?
Just 2 small points. One, this is current state. So
Exactly.
we've known for 2 years what the impact of this is. And yes, maybe there's less traffic now than there might be in the future, but this is not a radical change, to John's point. This is maintenance of what is, and we can see what it is. Secondly, yes, this is a road, but there's nothing that says roads are for cars. Roads can be for anything. And I think that roads should be less for cars and more for other means of transportation if we're going to ever fight our way out of the environmental crisis that we're in. We keep defaulting. We did it in the conversation around Connecticut Avenue. We're doing it again tonight. We keep defaulting to the inconvenience of not being able to drive our own cars in a less traffic-filled environment. And if that's the logic that governs decision-making, then we're sunk environmentally, because that is exactly why we're in the mess that we're in, because people won't move away from the easiest means of transportation available to them. So Chaz, to your point, I think compromising here is a terrible start point. And I agree with your instinct to be opposed to compromise. I'm disappointed that you've chosen to compromise, but I think that given that we're in the current state, given that there is an existential environmental crisis that we're facing, and that we have to take important steps to change it, that failing to do this little step on our part, to me, is an abdication of our responsibilities.
And Chaz, I just want to say something, and then you can, speak as well. And I just, agree with Michael. This is not, it really frustrates me to kind of hear the commission say things like alluding to the fact that this is a radical idea or this is something new. It is closed. We're asking for this closure to continue. We could easily ask if disruptions come about in the future to rethink it. I don't understand why the commission wants to go backwards. We're in a closure state now. I live right off of one of the major roads that was the major argument that got our council member to change her vote, which was Chestnut Street. Since that time, Chestnut Street has been redesigned. And I can tell you personally, and we were just talking about this, the traffic since Oregon Avenue has been opened has been completely minimal, completely hardly any cut through traffic. And I know there's someone in the audience that I had, kind of went back and forth with this, because as a commissioner, I was adamant to have my community heard on this issue because I lived it. I stood outside my street and yelled at cars running and speeding up and down 31st Street, which is where I live, directly, probably 1,000 yards from Wise Road. That has been alleviated. So a lot of the issues that directly impacted some of these immediate roads on the west of the park have been alleviated. So I don't understand why the commission would not want to continue in this state unless, and we're talking about this data with DDOT and observing traffic conditions. Obviously, maybe in September or maybe, and they projected this out to 2045, we have a long way to go before Connecticut Avenue is built. It hasn't even been designed. We have people in the background that are trying to sue to prevent that from occurring. So we don't know when that's going to occur, but we could easily, just as easily, MPS could just as easily say that now conditions have become a problem. We need to go to somewhere else, as opposed to changing the steady state. And one of the things that makes this so important is what Michael has hit on. History goes both ways. And we know how sometimes history is portrayed. There's two sides to the story of history. And at some point in the history of this park, which is a national park, but it is within the District of Columbia, so we have a lot to say on its use. Our council has said they want it closed. Our national delegate has said they want it closed. Montgomery County Council has said that they want it permanently closed. And a majority of commenters have said that they wanted it closed. And we look at who's here on the call today. We passed this out to our community. I put this out on the email list, which is over 1,000 people. And right now we have 8 attendees. So I don't know if we're creating a problem that doesn't really exist. It doesn't really exist right now on my side because no one is, complaining about traffic issues. Most of the people are talking about a future state. Well, we're not there yet. And I don't know why we want to change this current state, which actually mitigates a lot of things that are happening in the District of Columbia. If you remember Janice Lewis George's first, comments regarding her decision to agree to this closure, it was because we had a child in Ward 4 that was killed riding his bike on a car. And she wanted safe spaces for people to use and to go. And that is how we transform as a society. I don't want to go back to the 1800s. That's not good for me. You know, I want us to keep growing as a city and as a society. And climate, environmentalism, and safe spaces in the District of Columbia are critical at this time. We've had 4 traffic fatalities just within this month of July. Our Vision Zero policy is a complete failure. And I don't understand why, as a government, we keep making decisions that bring us further away from our goals. And to me, maintaining the state that we are in brings us closer to the goals. And at the same time, DDOT understands what they should be doing in terms of infrastructure to making the surrounding areas on the east and west of Rock Creek Park even more safer. And they should do that regardless of whether we go with option 1, 2, or 3. They know about this. They put it in their report. So regardless of our decision here tonight, that's something that we need to continue to urge them to do, because at some point in time, you know, I want to see the future of Rock Creek Park a park that's, you know, for pedestrian usage. And it's the other thing that we had talked about today with Michael is just a lot of our impact in this city, and I don't want this to be lost on us, is commuter traffic from Maryland. I know the people that I saw running up and down my street on 31st Street, they had Maryland tags. And it is absolutely true that, you know, Maryland drivers cause us a lot of grief. So we have to, you know, we have to move our city forward, and we have to protect our people in doing it. And we have to continue to move towards our broader goals. And that's why I drafted the resolution. So I just wanted to add that. Chaz and Connie.
No, I think I appreciate your points, Lisa. I don't have a lot to add, though. Thank you.
Okay, Connie.
Yeah, you know, I'm listening to both sides, and I have to say that, you know, with my economics background, you know, people's behavior changes when things change, and the Beach Drive has been closed. So I would like to know, has there been a real diversion of traffic since it's been closed? My personal feeling is that downtown, it's a crisis right now. There's a lot of vacancies. People are not going back to work because they now have gotten used to 2.5 years. They had to change. They couldn't go into an office because of the pandemic. You know, will they go back to the office after we get things sort of like under control, which I personally think it's not going to. I think in the fall, we're going to get another variant. We're going to have to go through vaccines. I also think that it's just not clear with, you know, gas prices so high. Are people really going to be driving? So, I mean, there's a lot of considerations, I think, in terms of behavior. I'm a little bit, like, I don't understand how we went from 100% closed to 75% open even. I mean, I don't understand necessarily just the options that they looked at. I mean, like Randy, I mean, if you really want to compromise, you would compromise, like, you know, you let people go through for certain hours and then you open it for everyone else. But they're not considering that. I don't know what all their difficulties is, but if we're only going to have these options open, I don't feel like, you know, the option of opening it is the right one right now, because I feel like we are in a world of change. We're not in the we're not in the, you know, the 2019, 2017 world yet. We are changing. I know so many people who are just telecommuting. We're still doing hybrid meetings. I don't see this, the scariness of all the traffic. And I think if NPS is open to change, then when Connecticut Avenue, all of these changes happen, I am positive DDOT is going to do a study. They're going to have to, because people will complain. And if it is that case, the road is there. They could at that point decide, and I bet you they may find the solution, which is to open it up to commuter traffic in the morning then, and then leave it, you know, available for everyone else. I think we have to, like, ride this. You know, I've listened to everyone's arguments. I think Michael's and Lisa's are the strongest for me, because climate change is here, and all of these things are hard. And I am a driver, you know, I don't have a car right now, and it was hard for me to get places. I walked a long way in the heat. It was not easy, But I think then you would then change your behavior, how many times you walk, how you get things. Certain people who can't walk, make the road available. That's where I'm sort of ending up right now. So I am supportive of this view. I think NPS, if they're open, we'll have another shot at it. You know, if we need to close or rather open Beach Drive for commuter traffic, I think we can think about it then. But right now, everything is up in the air and it's closed already. So I don't know why we want to reopen it at this point, frankly.
Can I suggest, Lisa, that we sort of wrap up the commissioner's comments, and Steve Seelig has had his hand up, and
Yeah.
listen to him, and then we should take a vote.
Okay, John and then Peter, and then we'll go to community comments.
Very briefly, last week I stood at the corner in the morning at Tennyson and Oregon, and I watched the cars. And they came down Tennyson, which is probably why they're not going across Chestnut anymore. And about half of them continued down to Military to St. John's, and about half of them turned right and went up Nebraska. So if you're talking about Vision Zero, Oregon and Nebraska are more heavily trafficked, more pedestrians, more other cars, where there's not those kinds of intersections on Beach Drive. So, you know, that's anecdotally from a very short sampling, but I just wanted to mention that, yes, with the bridge closed and with the park closed, there's a lot more traffic on Oregon Avenue swinging over to Nebraska.
And John, it's to that point that I added to Lisa's recommendation, Lisa's proposition, the recommendation that DDOT start putting up signage to keep cars on main roads where they belong. And they can do that, and they can keep them off Tennyson like your son wants and like I want, and keep them on major roads where they belong. It's a signage issue.
Well, Oregon and Nebraska are major roads, and that's where those cars are going.
Can I just ask a procedural point? I mean, if everybody goes as they now say, the resolution as written will go down, is there any appetite to a compromise? Look, I understand all, I have great sympathy for, this is not an easy one. And to all the points Connie made, assuredly there's gargantuan amounts of uncertainty here about how the world's going to come back. So it seems to me that having, setting this up, going with the MPS compromise for now, but putting some time limit on our support of it, I just want to know, is there any appetite for rewording?
I'm not going to accept that friendly amendment.
Okay, but I mean, so if it goes down, then we just move on. We don't make a comment.
It goes down.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to Steve Seelig.
Yeah.
Sorry, it takes 3 buttons to push to get on, so I apologize for that. Yeah, I have several things to talk about, and in particular in the data, because I think one of the problems with what NPS is doing, the data doesn't really support it. And I know you alluded to this, Lisa, but I want to speak much more cogently about the DDOT data. DDOT has had the entire pandemic to study traffic patterns around the park. Let me repeat that. They have had the entire pandemic to study traffic patterns. They have not done a recent current state analysis about what traffic is doing. They based it on pre-pandemic data, they aged it, and they pushed it forward to 2045. And so at the least, this commission and the public should require that that be done with current state information. So the entire thing that this is built upon is essentially a canard, that there's additional traffic. There'll be $18 million more of who even knows if we're going to have internal combustion engines by then? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, the data they use. So DDOT can do that. DDOT can tell us right now what exactly is happening. Is there a problem? Is it like Connie says, that 20% of people aren't driving, they're never going to drive again? But it's unconscionable that DDOT's report should say what it did. They have abdicated their responsibility. It's not true, Randy, that this is the same data that they've used for any of their other analyses, right? This is one where it's post-COVID and they have not done their homework. They've just rested on their laurels. So that's point one. Point two is that the National Park Service, the reason, Connie, you asked, why did they come up with this compromise? Because they have said that they want to keep people off the social trails. Do you know what they did to figure out the social trails? They said that they did GPS analysis of what's happened on the trails. I spoke to an expert in GPS analysis. That data is not anywhere near as specific or as accurate as NPS is putting out there. Plus, they haven't even shown their work. They haven't said, well, there's more people walking during the weekdays than on the weekends, and they're causing the social trails. And they also haven't taken into account the fact where people are entering the park, and even if they're going down into the park to Beach Drive. That's the supposition here. People are going to Beach Drive on these social trails. They haven't proved their case on that. So that's issue number two on the data. But perhaps the worst one is this whole notion that they put forth that they are going to monitor this and they are going to adjust. What do they call it? Some sort of management of some sort. They don't have any baseline data. They have no baseline data upon which they can make a decision to change what it is that they're going to do. If they don't have current data, it's going to be impossible for them to ever change what they're doing. It's a bunch of, well, hogwash. I was going to use the other horse thing, but they don't have any data that supports where it is that they're going to go and how it is that they're going to do this management and when and if they're even going to reopen the park. So let me give you an example. What if it turns out that the social trail use continues to be the same, if not worse, after they open the roadway? Do you think they're going to go ahead and then say, oh, let's close the roadway now because it's getting worse? I don't really understand how it is that they're possibly going to act on any of this data. So the data issue, I can't believe that, and I spent a lot of time reading this, okay? It's not real and it's not there. And I would imagine that NPS is going to be embarrassed by this at some point, and they're going to have to go back and redo this. But for the commission to buy into this, I think that's inexcusable. I just want to say a couple other things. The existential issue, of course, Lisa spoke about very eloquently, as did Mike. Listen, I mean, the fact that what I'm seeing is that the folks who want to increase traffic in the park are of an older demographic than a lot of the people who are going to have to end up living with this stuff. That's troubling to me. But especially troubling is the fact that my kid rides his bike to work, to school every day. He rides through the closed park every day. He goes to DCI every day by bicycle. He will not be able to do that anymore. He will not be able to ride. There are no other thoroughfares to go from Ward 3 to across the park to DCI where he goes to school. But this is not just my kid's issue. This is everybody's issue. You're going to spill more people on city streets. And I think the commission is aware that 3 cyclists were killed this past week on city streets. You're pushing people to a place where they're going to be killed because they cannot use this park. So, but, I'm appealing to people's emotions on the last one, but if you're set on the data, look at the data, and it's not telling you what you think it's telling you. Thank you. I'm happy to talk more about my analysis of the data with folks if they want. Okay, thank you.
Lisa,
You're muted, Lisa.
Sorry. Thanks, Steve. Lee?
Yes, hi. I have to agree with Mr. Selig regarding the data. there's, as you probably know, there's some huge Montgomery County residential projects coming. And I don't see where that's been taken into consideration. And personally, I don't understand why you couldn't keep the park closed except during rush hours. And if nothing else, as an experiment, you know, open it up during rush hours and then close it down the rest of the time, which to me seems like a pretty easy and good compromise. That's the main thing I wanted to say. The other thing I want to kind of bring up, I'm very disappointed that I've sat through 2.5 hours of listening to this ANC, and only now at the tail end do you bring up something pretty relevant to anyone who's in the bike versus no bike controversy. I don't understand why this, I would ask the council, I mean the ANC, in the future to bring anything as related to the bike lanes and closures to the beginning of the program, not to the end. I believe, Lisa, you said that there were only 8 people left. I'm trying to cook dinner now because I haven't eaten because I've been watching all this. So to put this at the end, you know, you've been accused sometimes of not getting public input. Well, this is the reason why. And so again, I just ask that these things be brought up early in the meeting agenda and not at the last minute, at the last item. So thank you. You're muted.
Thank you, Lee.
Sure.
Point well taken. Connie had her hand up.
Yeah, I just would like to make a small point. So my small point is that I think the reason we have, perhaps the reason is we have this sort of segmented data, 2017 to 2019, because I think the world thought COVID would come. It was like out of the ordinary and it would go away and life would continue as usual. And I think what we're seeing is that is just not true.
Right.
And I think that DDOT has not examined it because I think we're still in this, is it going to be, you know, endemic? Is this really a change? What does it mean for everyone? What does it mean for our society and the way we organize our lives? And I think that's the crux of the problem right now, you know, where we have this old data, we have this data that seems like, oh, it's just an aberration. And then we're going to get back to what's new. I don't believe it's an aberration. I believe, for instance, if we didn't have COVID and we closed Beach Drive, you know, that's a little different. That means we're forcing everyone on this one change, change. Instead, the entire world, especially, you know, all of the US has changed, right? We've all faced this terrible situation all together. We've all had to kind of like figure things out on the go. And Beach Drive was closed to allow people to get out of their house and to be able to go out into fresh air because we couldn't really congregate together anywhere else, right? And now it's actually staying, it's not going. And we have monkeypox along the way. I mean, there's just so many things happening. It's not, we're not in the same world anymore. And I don't even think it's pre or post. It's kind of like then, now, like, you know, it's like a whole change. And so I just wanted to make that point because we keep saying it as if DDOT believes once this is done, it'll start again, but I don't think it's true.
Thank you, Connie. So I think all the commissioners have had opportunity to kind of weigh in on this. We've also heard from members of our community. So I'm going to call for the vote. And the vote is on the resolution in support of alternative 2, which is full closure for recreational use. All those in favor, raise your hand. Aye. 3. All those opposed? 4. Okay, so the motion fails. And thank you all for your vote and your conversation.
Can I just make one comment then, Lisa? The National Park Service doesn't have to pay any attention to the ANCs at all. They don't have to give great weight or anything like that. So each of our individual comments can be persuasive to the Park Service. And so I would encourage individual commissioners to submit their comments by August 10th, because I think that Yeah, granted, it would be better if we could have the commission take a position, but if we can't, I mean, it's perfectly fine for all of us to submit our own comments, and which I intend to do.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Everyone can submit. You know, we're members of the public. Beyond
Right.
being a member of the commission, we're members of the public. So if that's what you guys want to do, feel free to do so. Okay, commission business. Let me find my agenda.
Minutes,
Too much paperwork around here.
minutes. Lisa, it's minutes first, so I can get that out of the way fast.
Go on, Peter.
Yeah, so I've circulated the July 11th minutes. I got back typos again, and gee, I thought I was getting better about typos, but Connie found some. And so I have accepted all of those, and I'd move that we approve the July 11th minutes.
Second,
With that, it's all those in favor? 7-0. Okay. John, are there any check payments?
There are no check payments, and thank you, Peter, for getting the minutes done. That'll help for our final component for our next, for the current OANC report. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, all those single motions just take a whole lot of space.
Okay, so for items for September 12th, we have BZA application for 6130 32nd Street, report on discussion of Connecticut Avenue reversible lanes and multimodal safety project. Presentation by Trey Holloway for update on ECC Murray. And Peter, you are going to shoot for the liquor license renewal at that meeting, the September 12th.
The liquor license renewal.
The
the
avenue.
avenue.
We did that. No, so what we got to do September, other thing we've got to do September 12th is we've got to decide about the candidates to join the ZDD. So that ought to go on the possibles.
But you're also going to bring the owner, right?
Yeah,
to-
the owner
you're
for
gonna-
the avenue.
Oh, yes. Oh, I got, yes, and I will, yes, and that's right. I know what you're talking
Try to
about.
get the.
Yeah, there's gonna, someone wants to vet with us a very initial proposal for the American City Diner.
Oh, me too.
That would be wonderful.
Wow, okay. Is it wonderful? Not really. You don't look good. You don't look happy. Maybe it'll go away before September.
Okay, guys, we're done.
Okay,
Is there anything else that I missed?
Connie, you get to chat.
Oh, yes. No, I'm sorry. I was staring
Sure.
at his face.
Chat
I'm
is
sorry.
important.
Yeah,
There's
let
no Q&A.
Yeah, wait, let me save the chat. Okay. Yeah, I just saved it as long as no one puts any more things in the chat. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Okay, bye.
have a good August.
Oh, yeah,
everyone.
have a good
Yeah.
night, everyone.
Yes.
See you in September.
Okay,
Right.
bye.